PodcastCoug Season 7, Episode 8.
You are listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk. And we took another loss this time down in Corvallis, October 15th, to a very, very good OSU team, 24-10. And now we're believing for an upset against Utah Thursday night in Pullman. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Season 7. It is Episode 8 of the PodcastCoug. Hope you had a great week. It has been bye week, and here we go. We've got Utah coming up Thursday night. Briefly, we're going to hit on Oregon State. They're tracking, 8 to 9 wins this season, and you know what? We just outgained them. It was 17-10 in the fourth quarter, and our offense never lit up the scoreboard during that game at all. It really is an 8-game winning streak, right? Going into Corvallis, and our offense just did not show up, right? So generally it was about keeping the Beavs off the board, and we couldn't extend that 9-game winning streak on the 15th back in a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, whatever. But the Cougs offense basically didn't exist, right? Didn't show up to that 24-10 loss. Tough loss for the Cougs. Great win for OSU fans. Good for you. Your program has been rebuilding for decades and decades and decades, and this is the first time I have ever seen this where you guys are on a roll and never have been looking so good. Just this year. What a great year it's been for Oregon State. So hats off to Oregon State. Previous 8 years, we've been averaging about 45 points a game against Oregon State. And these aren't the same Cougs this year, right? And they're not the same Beavs, right? October 15th, the total points, Wazoo's lowest against Oregon State since 2012. That was Leach's first year. We lost 19-6. That outcome was just bad, right? Basically, Cam Ward didn't have very much to operate and to be efficient or effective on the OSU pass rush. The Beavers just sacked Ward 6 times, right? 6 times. Can we hear that, Ferris Bueller? 9 times. Actually, it's 6, right? Ward completing about percentage-wise 46%, which is his lowest of the season. 6 sacks he took, which was a season high. So basically, it was Cam's worst game of the year, right? Thursday is going to tell us if he bounces back or not, right? Thursday night, right? If not, the message boards are going to continue to blow up, right? And you know who they want to fire, right? So, hey, going back to the first half, all the way back to the first half of the USC game, our offense went 14 consecutive drives without scoring a TD before Ward tossed a 9-yard pass to Jalen Jenkins in the third quarter to make it a 17-10 ball game. But the Cougs either punted or turned it over on downs in that 4 drives that followed that, leaving Corvallis with only 10 points. I mean, just 10 points to show 368 yards of total offense, 24 more than the Beavers had. And so what does it look like, right? I mean, it was just a bad game for the Cougs, both offense and defense. We're flushing it. We move on, like I say in business, next. It's one word, next, right? Now, what's going on right now in the Pac-12, right? Oregon, right? Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Oregon State. There's your top 4 right there. Who would have thought that Oregon State as at number 4, right? And what's so revealing is it's proven that we what's revealing, we can hang with anybody. I mean, everybody we can hang with, all right? And so assuming we lose to Utah, right, on Thursday night, we're going to talk about Utah in the second half of the PodcastCoug, but the 4 remaining games are beatable, of course. And here's the scenario I kind of put together. It's kind of like a speculation. Speculation at 7-5. Realistically, right, we lose on Thursday night, right? We win. We win down in Palo Alto at the farm at Stanford. We beat Arizona State. We win against Arizona, and we lose to the UW. That puts us at 7-5. All right. Now, here's an 8-4, drinkingthekoolaid.com, right? Just here we go. Utah, we lose. Stanford, we win. Arizona State, we win. Arizona, victory. And the Apple Cup victory, right? And that's 8-4. Now, that is definitely drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Worst case scenario. Well, worst case speculation, not worst case scenario. We're at 6-6. And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up 6-6 this year, right? Because it's, sure, we can lose to Utah and win out. Win 4 in a row. That's Stanford, Arizona State, Arizona, and UW, right? Can we, right? 4 in a row like that? Yeah, sure. But we haven't seen the offense this year put up points, okay? Right? You either have it or you don't, right? And it might be a combination. We've talked about this many times. Could be a combination of a lot of things. Could be coaching. It could be that next level talent. It could be holding on to the ball too long. You doing your quick reads. It could be just like, hey, this isn't the FCS level where you just wing it. Just wing it and see what happens. No, you've got to know what's going on. And I'm an AG man. Anthony Gordon, loved him. Luke Falk. This is not the same type of quarterback. And so things have got to happen. So that's the speculation. I'm hoping we're going to end up 7-5, but I wouldn't be surprised if we end up at 6-6. The rest of the Pac-12, here we are. Oregon stands at number 1 in the rankings, in the standings, and in the conference, they're 4-0, right? Overall record 6-1. We got USC at 4-1, 6-1, and then UCLA at 3-1 and 6-1, right? Utah is right there, 3-1, 5-2. Oregon State 3-2, 6-2, and it goes on from there. Washington State, Berkeley, Arizona State, Colorado, and Stanford. Both Colorado and Stanford are kind of at the basement. Surprise win that Colorado had, but yeah, Bo Nix throws for 5 touchdowns. For Oregon, blows past number 9 UCLA last Saturday, 45-30. Wow, that was a game. UCLA, man, number 9 UCLA's Oregon makes it happen, right? Stanford just keeps fighting till the end. Stanford beats ASU at the very end, 15-14, their first conference win of the season. I'm thinking about going down to Palo Alto. I've got some points or miles on Alaska Airlines, and thinking about blowing down to the Stanford game. I don't know. I might do it. It depends. Easy though, just there and back. Leave in the morning, come back at night. And I've never been on the campus before. It'd be great to see Stanford campus as well. Oregon State blows past Colorado for their 3rd straight win, 42-9, just boat raced them. Washington held off for Cal to secure their first road win of the season, 28-21 in Berkeley. And both, UW and Penix didn't look great, but they made a lot of mistakes, but they eked out with a win against Cal. And we've got the Utes in Pullman on Thursday night. It's national television. We're going to talk about the Utes, Utah, coming up next right here on the second half of the PodcastCoug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7. From condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Hand left wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. We got number 15, Utah at Washington State. We're both coming off on a bye week, right? Meeting at Martin Stadium Thursday night, featuring the team that beat USC on October 15th. And the Cougs looking for our next win, right? 7 p.m. kick, FS1 national TV. Temperature is going to be around the mid-30s, and it's time to bundle up, get those coats out, right? It's going to be cold in Pullman for the first time of the year, for the first game of the year, I should say. Utes are coming in as a 7-point favorite, and this is the first Thursday game. How about this? Since Rutgers, we lost to Rutgers in Seattle in 2014. And the first Thursday game in Pullman since the loss to Arizona State in 2013. So Kyle Whittingham is 148-72. That's 148 wins, 72 losses. You can see, this guy's a success. Kyle has been successful. And, lately, past couple of years, not so much, but he's in his 18th season. Excuse me. Of course he's been successful in the last couple of years. I was thinking of Stanford for a moment there. My mind shifted over to Stanford. No, Kyle Whittingham. Boy, I'll tell you, last year's Pac-12 champions, right? He's in his 18th season at Utah, and typically their defense have just been amazing, right? Led by their phenom cornerback Clark Phillips, right? And quarterback Cameron Rising. He had a 75-yard scoring drive in the fourth quarter against, USC was previously undefeated, right? He had that 75-yard drive in the fourth quarter. The drive ended in a touchdown, a go-ahead 2-point conversion with less than a minute to play at Storybook, and the Utes won in Rice Eccles 43-42 in a shootout at Rice Eccles at Salt Lake City. Just that, what an amazing game, right? What an incredible win for Utah. On the other hand, the Cougs just had the opposite heading into the bye week after the most disappointing performance of the season. Our offense fell flat, and I'm glad I didn't go to Corvallis. I told you on the last podcast, episode 7, that I was thinking about driving down to Corvallis. Love doing that. Going to, I still refer to Parker Stadium, but my mind is blank. Of course, Reser Stadium. I'm so glad I didn't go to that game, right? Oh my gosh, what a long drive. That would have been very sad. I'm so glad I didn't go to that game, right? Most disappointing performance of the season, right? The worst performance of the season. Our offense fell flat. Rushing defense couldn't hold up during that Oregon State win down at Reser, and it was just a bad evening in Corvallis. And the Utes are the reigning Pac-12 champions, and they are here in Pullman. And it's been a while since they've been in Pullman, right? We'll talk about that. But preseason favorites, they were picked to win even over Oregon, and they got that USC win. What a huge win coming off that big win. Guess what? They are the real deal, right back in the conversation of the Pac-12 champions. I mean, here they are, and they started off the season with a tough, close loss at Florida, the Gators, and they came back with 4 consecutive blowout wins, right? Including the 42-16 boat race against Oregon State before losing to 42-32 at UCLA. So what's interesting is when you think about Utah, you think of a defensive-minded program, and Utah, surprisingly, is one of the most productive offenses in our conference. Surprise. They've got it all, not just defense. They've got it on the offensive side. Led by quarterback Cameron Rising, the Utes have a running back, by the way, Tavian Thomas. He's averaging 192 yards per game, leads the conference with 19 touchdowns. Rising has passed for 1,900 yards, 15 TDs, 3 interceptions. That's it. He's got a 70% completion rate. Adding 308 yards on the ground for himself, 6 rushing touchdowns for him. And Rising's favorite target is tight end Dalton Kincaid at 560 yards, 6 touchdowns, 39 catches. So their offense is on all 4 cylinders. They're looking great. How about all 6 or 8 cylinders? They're looking pretty good. Utah is the real deal. And their defense is decent too. Actually, a little bit more decent. They're pretty good. Defense first in the Pac-12 in passing defense, second in total defense, and fourth in scoring defense. But the Utes have shown some weaknesses, right, in their pass coverage in recent weeks, allowing several big plays, including, they've allowed passes of 70, 65, and 63 yards. So, they've got a little bit of weakness, right? And on their pass coverage. But the Utes defense is led by Clark Williams, an All-American quarterback, who has 5 of the team's 10 interceptions. And their front 7, though, has been really inconsistent about stopping the run, okay? Which is really interesting. So they are not consistent at stopping the run. They're giving it about 142. They're giving up about 142 rushing yards per game. So if we can exploit on that, but Jalen Jenkins, I love that guy. Just don't know if he can do it. You never know. You just never know. We'll talk about that in a moment, how you never know. You guys know what I'm talking about. But our rushing defense will be tested after giving up a season high of 203 yards against Oregon State. And, the Cougs have allowed more than 150 rushing yards in 3 of their past 4 games. So Utah's high-scoring offense is going to be up against our defense that allows only 21 points per game. It's going to be interesting. We're only allowing 21 points with our opponents. So pretty interesting. But, our main concern is, as you know, is our defense, right? And actually, it's our offense, too. Offense has no rhythm whatsoever. Mr. Ward holds onto the ball too long, right? Scrambles and wings it, and that's just not going to happen. That you can't cut that in this level, right? You just can't be winging it all the time. We're not playing pure Prairie League anymore, right? Really? I mean, it's our offensive line's inability to protect the quarterback. Cam Ward, and he's been sacked 11 times in the past 2 games. 11 times. Sacked in the past 2 games. So Ward has completed less than 50% of his passes against Oregon State. Just a bad night. Just bad. Last year, Utah gave us 7 fumbles, but our offense couldn't capitalize on that. We had a 24-13 loss last year in Salt Lake City. And Delora was hurt. We had Garantano was in. But, series overall, Utah has a 10-9 lead in this series. It's been close, 10-9. Not bad. Very competitive over the past several years. But since joining the Pac-12 in 2010, Utah is 5-4 against the Cougs. Now, the Utes have won 3 consecutive games in a row, right? All in Salt Lake. Right? They haven't been to Pullman since 2018, and that was a 28-24 win. Yeah, that was a good year. 2018. That was a great year. But here's the deal. Almost everyone is expecting a loss to Utah. Okay? Almost everyone is expecting a Utah win, right? This could be one of those surprises, right? That we didn't see that coming, right? Just when we think, right? Could be a trap game. I mean, it could be. Utah doesn't show up. It's a trap game. right? Not likely, but you just never know. Sometimes the opposite happens in college football, right? Everybody predicts a high score, and then it ends up being a low score ball game. Basically it fools everybody. I don't care if all the analysts, the speculators, the pros, the announcers, everybody, the color guys, everybody in the world that has a website and their YouTube channel, everybody gets shocked by the opposite that happens. So everybody expects an offensive shootout, and it becomes a low scoring game. You get it, right? So just when everybody thinks that Utah is just going to win, we need one of those, all the stars lined up for Washington State. Every star lining up on Thursday night. We need something. We need something miraculous. We need to have Cam Ward show us what he did down in Texas. Okay, we need something. We need our defense to step up like it did in the first couple of games, and both offense and against the Oregon game. Right? Both offense and defense we need to play our best game of the year, and Utah needs to play their worst game of the year, right? So, hey, that's it for episode 8 of our 7th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. It's Utah at Washington State. Have a great week. Thursday night, God bless, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.